A second American Civil War is coming. Not a question of if, a question of when and how violent. I want to walk you through why I think this is structurally almost unavoidable, what the war will actually look like. It won't be North versus South. And what kind of country emerges on the other side. The country I'm describing has 434 million firearms in private hands. It worships its wars as sacred. It has resolved nearly every major political conflict in its history through violence rather than diplomacy. And right now, every story that used to hold it together is dying at the same time. Let's get into it. 3 things you need to know about America before any of this makes sense. First, America enjoys violence. 434 million guns, 1.3 per person, and many of them are semi-automatic. Americans don't just tolerate gun ownership, they treat the Second Amendment as sacred. The most watched television event every year is the Super Bowl, a sport so violent that players in their 30s are committing suicide or killing people because their brains have been destroyed on the field. American football is barbaric, and America loves it. No other country plays it. Second, America has been continuously at war since 1776. And when you look closely at those wars, the reasons are often thinner than the mythology suggests. Take the Revolution. The standard story is sacred rebellion against tyranny. The reality? The British were taxing the colonies, but the British were also providing their defense. Taxation wasn't unreasonable. The colonists rebelled anyway, and the Revolution itself was effectively the first American Civil War. Many Americans wanted to remain in the Union, and these loyalists were terrorized by pro-independence extremists. After independence came manifest destiny, the doctrine that God willed American control over all of North and South America. That meant violent colonization and the killing of natives across the continent. Then 1861 to 1865. The Civil War. 800,000 to 1 million dead. More Americans than World War I and World War II combined. And here's the thing. They didn't have to fight that war either. The North was industrial, 22 million people, free labor, prosperous. The South was agricultural, 9 million people, dependent on slave labor, which is an inefficient use of manpower. The standard explanation is that the North fought to end the evil of slavery. That's not what happened. Slavery was constitutional. The South was free to keep slaves. The actual fight was over the Western states being admitted to the Union, whether they'd come in pro or anti-slavery, and which side that would tip the Senate. For decades, the Missouri Compromise held the balance. 1 slave state, 1 free state. Then, in 1860, Lincoln won. Lincoln was a lawyer. He believed the South had a legal right to slavery where it already existed, but that limiting it in the West would let it die out naturally over a century. The South didn't trust him and seceded. Lincoln invaded. So the war was really about federal power versus states' rights. Lincoln himself said, "If I could end the war without freeing any slaves, I would do so." They could have negotiated. They could have separated peacefully. They chose the gruesome war. That's the third thing. America doesn't resolve conflicts through diplomacy. It resolves them through war. So with that history in mind, look at the conflicts inside America today. They are far more serious than the divisions on the eve of the First Civil War. Haves versus have-nots. The top 1% don't just own most of the wealth, they control the means of production. New money flowing into the system gets captured by them. Most of their income comes from collecting debt, exploiting other people. This is a rentier economy, left versus right, the culture war. This division goes back to the founding in the 1600s. 2 strands. The first, Pilgrims and Puritans, who came to build a Christian nation under God's law. They are still here. They are today's right. The second, Enlightenment dissidents who believed reason should govern human affairs. The Founding Fathers were deists. God exists, but gave us reason and logic to run our own affairs. The Constitution is a deist document. Separation of church and state. A multicultural, secular empire. That strand is today's left. And here's where the two divisions compound. The left now overlaps heavily with the wealthy, urban, coastal, college-educated, liberal, so the right feels economically dispossessed and culturally erased at the same time. Empire versus democracy. Some Americans benefit enormously from empire. Wall Street got rich off Afghanistan and Iraq. The right sent its sons to fight, lost limbs, paid the taxes, and now pays the debt. The right is isolationist for a reason. They want America to be an island. There is no political solution to any of these divisions on the table. 1. The over-militarization of America. 434 million guns in private hands. Then look at small-town police forces. They have armored vehicles, tanks, helicopters, machine guns, bulletproof vests, hand-me-downs from the military. State National Guards are armies in themselves. Federal agencies, the FBI, the CIA, Homeland Security, the NSA, have their own special forces, their own helicopters, jets, missiles. They could fight wars against each other, then the actual military. Look at the top 5 air forces in the world. 4 of the top 5 are arms of the U.S. military: the U.S. Air Force, the U.S. Navy, the U.S. Army, and the U.S. Marine Corps. Russia, the entire country, comes third. And then Special Forces. Special Forces are good for narrow missions, hostage rescue, covert operations. The problem is they cannot be controlled. In Mexico, the people running the most violent drug cartels are former Special Forces. In 2000, America had 38,000 Special Forces. Today, it's around 72 to 73,000, trained in demolition, armies unto themselves. It would take roughly 1,000 of these operators to overthrow the U.S. government. Delta Force, the most elite unit, has exactly 1,000 members. If the man running Delta Force decides one morning that he wants to topple the government, structurally, he can. 2. The breakdown of narratives. A nation is a fiction everyone agrees to believe. America had 3 central fictions, and all 3 are dead. The American dream, work hard, play by the rules, succeed. Nobody under 35 believes this anymore. Inequality killed it. College graduates carry tens of thousands in debt. Consumers carry credit card debt. Houses are unaffordable. The new American dream is, how do I stay out of debt? People believe Washington is corrupt and serves the rich. There's no reason to work hard. America is good. America defends freedom and democracy. The left is now taught that America was founded on slavery, violence, and war, a force of destruction. The right believes America is an imperialist machine that wrecks countries for no reason. Watch Israel right now. More young people across the political spectrum are concluding America is a force of evil. Liberalism, the idea that we have differences but mechanisms exist to resolve them through debate, free speech, evidence. Liberalism held the center. Liberalism died in 2016. When Trump won, liberals went insane. Their conclusion was that the people couldn't be reasoned with, and therefore, why have free speech? Why have debate? Why have democracy? The middle vanished. 3. The breakdown of authority. What kept the country together was the belief that elites knew what they were doing and cared about the nation. The last 20 years killed that belief. Afghanistan and Iraq, wars fought for no reason. The 2008 financial crisis, banks stole from the country and kept the money. COVID, governments locked down schools, locked the poor out of work, mandated an experimental vaccine. Now there is no trusted institution left. Government, corrupt. Congress, universally hated. Mainstream media, the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN speaks for the rich, lies constantly. Science, discredited by COVID. Military, fighting pointless wars. Universities, captured by the culture war. And now, the courts. When Trump was convicted on 34 felonies in New York last week, half the country stopped trusting the justice system. Every institution that could have brought Americans together is falling one by one. So, a heavily armed population, no shared story, no trusted authority, and a long history of resolving disagreements through violence. The most likely outcome is civil war. It will look nothing like 1861. There won't be two clean sides. There will be many factions, many grievances, many flashpoints. So this won't be a single event. It will be a series of violent episodes spread over 10, 20, 50 years. 5 forms running simultaneously, layering on top of each other. Riots and unrest. We saw the preview during Trump's first term with the George Floyd protests. Expect more. Civil conflict. Neighbors taking up arms against neighbors. America is geographically polarized, but in pockets, the left and right live very close together. Small, isolated firefights. 1 or 2 dead. City or state secession. New York City or California, disgusted with the federal situation, declares independence. Their citizens are armed. They have functional state militaries. They get attacked by other states or factions. Insurgencies. Christian extremists or left-wing extremists attempting to seize control of a state government, say, New York or Virginia. Coup d'etat. An arm of the military, most likely special forces, moves against the government. All of this can happen at once. America is enormous, so there will be peaceful regions while New York City or Los Angeles burn. Whether the federal government itself is overthrown, I don't know. The structural forces tell me civil war is very likely and very chaotic. The specifics no one can predict. But I will say this about the outcome. When the war ends, I think America becomes a Christian isolationist theocracy. The reason is simple. 2 founding visions. The first, the multicultural secular empire spreading democracy, has been achieved, and it's what produced this catastrophe. The second, a white Christian nation under God's law, is still alive, still organized, and its adherents are the people most willing to fight and die for what they believe in. Many of them work in law enforcement, in the military, and especially in special forces. They win because they're prepared to. Quick aside on a question I get often. How powerful is the American president? Honestly, he's a figurehead. Power is diffused across institutions, and if those institutions are corrupt, there's very little a president can do. That's why November 2024 will see one of the lowest voter turnouts in American history. 4 years ago, people came out to remove Trump because they believed he was a threat to democracy. With Biden, they realized the whole system is corrupt. Burn it down. Who cares? Nobody cares who's president anymore. Which, ironically, helps Trump. Trump is unique because he embodies the culture war. Everything the left hates about the right manifests in Donald Trump. White, sexist, racist, vulgar, uneducated, no manners, no values, and he refuses to apologize for any of it. That's exactly why the right loves him. Their enemies hate him. For many on the right, Trump is the Messiah. He's Jesus. And every elite action since 2016 has confirmed this for them. The media spread the Russian agent story. No evidence, but people believed it. He was impeached twice. His house was raided. A Colorado judge tried to remove him from the ballot entirely. Everything the elite has done has been to destroy him, which has only canonized him. Here's the thought experiment. If you're a wealthy liberal elite and you genuinely want to end Donald Trump, there's exactly one move that destroys him forever. 3 words. Have dinner with him and say, "Let's be friends." Why does that destroy him? Because his entire appeal to MAGA is that he's an outsider, the enemy of the elite. The moment the elite embraces him, his base concludes they were fooled. that he was an insider all along. He's finished. Why won't they do it? Pure hatred. They cannot bring themselves to. They want him destroyed, not neutralized. This is what's called Trump derangement syndrome, the inability to think clearly about how to actually deal with him. And in their rage, the elites are doing the one thing that makes him invincible. They're tearing down every institution and every narrative that holds the country together. The New York Times, CNN, The Washington Post have spent 8 years relentlessly attacking him and shredding their own credibility in the process. The elites themselves destroyed liberalism, all because they hate Donald Trump. That hatred is what drives the Second Civil War. Here's how I see it playing out. November 2024. Trump wins. The first thing he has to figure out as president is, how do I stay in office for the rest of my life? Because the moment he leaves, he gets sued, jailed, or worse. White House or jailhouse. There's a constitutional trick available. The 22nd Amendment caps the presidency at 2 terms. It says nothing about how long you can serve as vice president. So, in 2028, Don Jr. runs for president. Trump runs as VP. Everyone knows who's actually in charge. That move alone triggers a constitutional crisis. The left goes insane. Riots. New York City and Boston threaten secession. Insurgencies against the Trump regime. But to make that 2028 plan work, he has to win over the deep state first. The cleanest way to do that is to start a war with Iran. That wins over the military-industrial complex, the Israel lobby, and a chunk of the elite. Now, I've argued before that America cannot win a war against Iran. The war drags on. So in 2028, his son is running for president, Trump is running for VP, and the war is going badly. Why is this good for Trump? Because there's one faction inside America that desperately needs that war to continue. The most pro-empire elements of the deep state, especially special forces. In 2028, if the war is on the line and Trump is the only candidate willing to keep prosecuting it, those people will commit acts of terrorism, political assassinations, election interference, anything to keep Trump in power. And that's the moment everything blows up. A contested 2028 election. New York, Boston, California declaring independence. Wars breaking out across America. Meanwhile, a pointless war grinding on in Iran. The most common objection, Trump is anti-war. He didn't start any wars in his first term. He says he won't. 3 things to weigh against that. First, what presidents say on the campaign trail and what they do in office are 2 different things. Always. Second, Trump has recently said publicly that Biden isn't doing enough to protect Israel, meaning he'll give Israel more weapons and defend it against Hezbollah and Iran. Third, look at the donors coalescing around him. Miriam Adelson, the most pro-Israel billionaire in America, is reportedly giving him around $90 million. Stephen Schwartzman, Bill Ackman. These are extremely pro-Israel donors. They want something for that money. My guess? Nikki Haley as VP, and a cabinet stacked with pro-Israel hawks like Mike Pompeo. Nikki Haley a few weeks ago visited Israel and signed an artillery shell bound for Gaza. Finish them. America loves Israel. She is openly calling for genocide of the Palestinians. If she becomes VP, that's a direct sign Trump is going to war with Iran. And Haley is useful precisely because she becomes the scapegoat. This war isn't my fault. It's Nikki Haley's. Remember, Trump believes he won in 2020 and lost the presidency because the deep state rigged the election against him for refusing to fight wars. So if he wants to stay in power, he has to play along with the deep state. We'll know by August whether Haley is on the ticket. Then the question becomes, how does his anti-war base react? At first, his base feels betrayed. The mainstream media, ironically, will support him because he's at war, but Trump will manipulate his base back. He'll blame Nikki Haley and the deep state. I was fooled. I was manipulated. After 2028, he can pivot. End the war. Declare America a Christian isolationist nation. He can scapegoat Israel. Israel tricked America into this. The Jews conspired against us. Plenty of people will say it. But whatever he does, every move inflames the civil war further. There's no path where his actions don't deepen the violence. He brings out the worst in everyone. I'll be honest, I'm a person of the left. My values are liberal left values. In 2016, when Trump won, I was traumatized. It took me a long time to step out of that trauma, and I still have liberal friends I've known for decades, who, the moment I say anything mildly nuanced about Trump, even just, he's an idiot, but he represents people who feel marginalized, become so angry I feel physically unsafe. They look like they want to hit me. You are not allowed, among liberals and leftists, to say anything nice about Donald Trump. That's the country we're in. In 2016, before Trump, America was a relatively sane place. Now, it's unrecognizable. What this all tells us is that America is going to retreat from the world. And when America retreats, what we get is a multipolar world. That's the next conversation.